Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Today is Friday, June 13th, day 616 of the war. Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our military reporter, Emanuel Fabian, and diplomatic reporter, Lazar Berman. Hello to both of you, and thanks for joining me after this sleepless night.
Hi, Amanda. Hey, Lazar.
Hello, Amanda. Hello, Manny.
Overnight, Israel launched a major offensive against the Islamic Republic of Iran, striking nuclear sites, military facilities, missile bases, and senior leadership. Manny and Lazar will fill us in on what was the trigger for the overnight attack. We'll hear about the mission itself, as well as Iran's retaliation as of recording time mid-morning on Friday. We'll also learn about the behind-the-scenes cooperation between the U.S. and Israel and how the world is responding to this preemptive strike so far. All this and more when we're back. And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our military reporter, Emanuel Fabian, and diplomatic reporter, Lazar Berman. All of Israel was awoken just before 3 a.m. with what appears to me to be an unprecedented national warning and siren alongside phone updates stating that due to preparations for a significant threat, it is required to comply with the Home Front Command guidelines that are currently being distributed throughout the media. This was the Israeli public's first real indication that Israel was already on site carrying out the first of several waves of attacks in Iran. The operation is called Rising Lion. It was named after a biblical verse from Numbers 23:24, a people that rises like a lion. So, Manny, just to begin with, what was the tipping point? Why these attacks right now?
So Israel is saying, and the army is saying, and I think also Netanyahu said so in his statement, that Israel has detected that Iran was advancing with going forward with a nuclear bomb. According to the army, Iran has the sort of enough enriched uranium for 15 nuclear bombs that it could manufacture, they say, within days. They would be able to do this, and this effort was being conducted secretly and away from the eyes of everyone else. And of course, this also comes during the ongoing talks between the US and Iran to try and reach a new deal. But Israel says that Iran is pushing forward with bombs and it needed to stop it. It called it an imminent threat and sort of at a position where Israel needed to act now or it would be too late.
Okay, so Manny, tell us about the makeup of the operation. How many aircraft were sent out? How many munitions? How many strikes?
So we're talking about 200 aircraft, mostly fighter jets. That's basically most of the Israeli fighter jets that Israel has. And they launched, the last number I heard was 330 munitions at 100 targets. And the targets themselves, of course, we saw the nuclear sites, which are the sort of the main part of this operation. In addition, there were other military facilities targeted, and of course, military commanders and nuclear scientists. So we are already hearing of 3 very senior Iranian military officials who have been killed in the strikes. We're talking about the chief of the Iranian military, Mohammad Bagheri, the IRGC chief, Hussein Salami, and the head of Iran's sort of emergency command. It's a sort of another unit under the military. Ghulam Ali Rashid was also killed. There has been reports of, I think, at least 6 Iranian nuclear scientists also killed in the strikes. The damage to the facilities themselves, we don't know exactly yet. I think we may need to wait for more details on how much damage was actually caused to these sites. Some of them are buried deep underground and it's much more difficult to get to, but at least the Natan site, which is partially above ground, we did see some very heavy strikes being carried out there and reports of explosions from that facility.
Lazar, ahead of these strikes, we are hearing that there was a very close U.S. cooperation. Of course, the U.S. is in direct talks with Iran over a nuclear deal. We've been hearing about this for months. And the messaging from the Trump administration to Israel has been very much, don't strike Iran, don't strike Iran. And yet, I just wonder at this point, are we considering this a bit of a bluff?
Yeah, so it seems like there was more coordination, at least what I'm hearing from officials in the prime minister's office, that the U.S. has known for at least a week, perhaps more, but we can say that in the entire week they knew. And if that is indeed the case, then you have to look at all the statements coming out of the U.S. through that light. Now, there was anonymous officials briefing ABC and NBC and saying that a strike might be close. That seems to be, they did that independently. But in terms of what Trump was saying, and you also heard Ambassador Mike Huckabee saying, Huckabee said, I don't think Israel will do it with the U.S. okay. And then Trump was saying, I've told him not to do it. And if you remember, Monday, Trump and Netanyahu spoke. And the reports that came out, it would seem from the Israeli side, was that it was a tense conversation. It was a dramatic conversation. And the real headline there was that Trump had told Netanyahu that he doesn't have a green light to attack. So if you look at all of that now, it would seem like that was part of a coordinated deception campaign.
There was actually one more puzzling thing, Lazar, in this makeup. You mentioned Mike Huckabee, of course, and last week, I believe it was, we reported that Ambassador Mike Huckabee met with the Haredi parties of the Israeli coalition, and warned them to stay inside the coalition. I thought that was such a strange event, and now I just wonder if he, at this point, was also warning them, hey, the Iran strike might be on the offing, and so stay within the coalition. Now is not the time to drop out.
Listen, I'd be surprised if he said it to Knesset members who are not in the security cabinet. I know that figure like Aryeh Deri, who was told about it a couple of days ahead of time and was told this is not the time to break apart the coalition. So yeah, that is interesting, and I'm sure that Huckabee had that in mind, but I don't think he would go around telling MKs because that could give up the whole plot. And there was also deception on the part of Israel. If you recall that Avner Netanyahu was supposed to get married on Monday, I imagine that won't happen now, but there was news of the preparation that the police were doing. And there was this weird report from the prime minister's office that Netanyahu is indeed going on vacation to the north. He's not going to cancel it. I don't see people talking about that he was canceling it, so that was odd as well. And then there was this statement by Netanyahu that there was progress in hostage talks, and no one seemed to really know what he was talking about. They said that Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and Mossad Chief David Barnea are going to fly to meet Witkoff. I asked the Prime Minister's office where that's going to take place, and very oddly, they said, well, we're not going to talk about the location because the meeting's not going to happen. Dermer and Barnea are still in Israel. So there was all sorts of deception, and it seems to have worked. For this stage, the question is what happens going forward. At least the first stage is quite successful in Israeli eyes.
Let's go to a short break. And we're back. Manny, this operation could not have happened without U.S. cooperation. At least that's my impression. What kind of cooperation are we seeing in the air?
So with the actual attack itself, it was all Israel. Israel said that it was coordinating with the US, it updated them, but as far as I understand, the Americans are not participating in the strikes themselves. They may, in fact, be participating in the defense efforts. Right now, literally as we're talking, the Israeli Air Force has begun to intercept the around 100 drones launched by Iran at Israel. And like in the past, in Iran's first attack on Israel on April 13th last year, the US was, of course, heavily involved in shooting down those drones, as were other allies of Israel in the region. So they're probably participating in that effort. And of course, they were updated ahead of time. This wouldn't have been carried out without the US knowing.
And is Israel now able to fly this far distance without any kind of help in terms of refueling at this point?
So the Israeli Air Force has its own refuelers. They are quite old, but I think it's important to note that the Israeli Air Force has carried out 10 strikes already in Yemen and 2 already in Iran. This will be the 3rd strike in Iran. So they have the relevant experience already. We know it works. Of course, Yemen's much further than Iran. So the refuelers that Israel do the job, I suppose, right now. But it definitely is a huge challenge to carry out strikes so far away from the country.
Okay, we're hearing that Jordan has closed its airspace, I assume, because of the retaliatory drones. Do you, Lazar, know of any other countries in the region that are also closing airspace right now?
I do not. If you remember that Jordan in the last Iranian attack, actually actively fought to shoot down Iranian missiles and drones, and of course, cast it as defending its own airspace. That's the way it put it there. We'll have to see if Jordan does anything this time. I know from Israeli sources that America is trying to cobble together that same coalition of Arab countries and the UK and France that defeated the Iranian attack last time. So we'll have to see if anyone else gets involved here. Of course, the situation is very different. Israel decided to open up this round, and it wasn't Iran. So this is indeed an unprecedented situation that we're finding ourselves in.
In fact, the response from Saudi Arabia has been a condemnation so far. I'll read out their statement so far. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of the blatant Israeli aggressions against the brotherly Islamic Republic of Iran, which undermine its sovereignty and security and constitute a clear violation of international laws and norms. Lazar, as our diplomatic reporter, do you expect that there will be more international condemnation of this preemptive strike?
Absolutely. Of course, condemnation, verbally doesn't mean that reflects what they actually think, especially in the Middle East. Let's remember that the Saudis and other Gulf countries who hate Iran have decided ever since the 2019 Aramco attacks and the Trump administration did not actually strike Iran in response directly. They decided that they can't rely on the U.S. to protect them, and the way to assure their own security is to enter into a new diplomatic process with Iran and to try to cool down tensions. And that's what they've been doing. They've sent that message to the U.S. that they do not support an attack, and they feel that they will be targeted. Of course, there's a chance that our Gulf allies will be targeted by Iran if Iran really finds itself, in a desperate situation. Of course, it could be that, we are so effective that Iran's ability to retaliate across the region against us is badly compromised. Let's not forget it's a very top-down military and security apparatus, and the more senior commanders we kill, it might lead to some paralysis, at least in the short term, of any major attacks on anyone besides Israel.
Manny, just to close out, Israel is now basically on war footing? We've been in war for 616 days. So what is this elevated level of security right now?
So the army has begun calling up thousands of reservists following the launch of this operation in Iran, especially in the north. There's fears that Hezbollah could be activated by Iran to respond. So there's been a call up of troops there, and the army's bolstering its forces, preparing to potentially defend or even attack if necessary. Also in the West Bank, the army's sort of imposed a closure on Palestinian towns and villages in the West Bank until further notice, that is, until the situation is clear. But there is definitely a major call up, and of course we can't forget this is all happening while Israel's still fighting Hamas in the Gaza Strip with 5 divisions there. So the army is definitely stretched to its limit right now.
And citizens are being told not to distance themselves more than 10 minutes from shelters, and the public transport is thinned out considerably, if not stopped entirely in certain regions. It's a very tense atmosphere. I don't know, Lazar, how are you feeling there in Jerusalem?
You know what? I was just outside, and people are kind of getting ready for Shabbat, and supermarkets are open. People are a little bit confused, but as far as I can tell, services will be held, Shabbat meals will be held. Kind of larger events that were planned will not be, but we'll see if they do cancel services, because that'll be hundreds of people gathering together. But it's a beautiful Jerusalem Friday so far.
School's out. I would assume that synagogues will also not be in session, but you'll have to update us later on. Manny, Lazar, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listeners, please check out our live blog for updates as it happens. Manny and Lazar are working around the clock with our other staff to get the news out to you. So thank you so much for listening to today's daily briefing. Check out another episode tomorrow. This episode was produced by the Podwaves. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.